let me down and I can't take it. I don't wanna fall in love again. You just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep...
Learning to mix vocals can seem like one of the most daunting tasks when you're learning music and music production, but I'll be honest, I think most people overcomplicate it. And in this video, what I want to do is mix a vocal from start to finish. I want to show you what a vocal should sound like before you start mixing it. I want to show you every plugin that I add, and I want to explain why I add them so you can make sure that you're kind of picking up some of these checkpoints and benchmarks and principles. That way, no matter what your vocal sounds like, you're able to incorporate some of these techniques and mix a vocal on your own. You might not be able to copy all of these settings because everybody sounds a little bit different. Every song is different. Every mic is different. However, you should be able to take these principles that we're going to talk about in this video and apply them to literally any vocal that you're ever going to mix. So we're going to dive into Cubase and look at how to mix a vocal from start to finish for a pop song. But before we do, my name's Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. We have weekly tutorials here where we teach music and music production. If you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. That helps us out a ton. And if you want to support our channel after the video, head over to our website, makepopmusic.com. We have sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs, and we just launched a full 14.5-hour, 76 lesson start to finish pop production course. So if you like stuff like this and you want to see me produce a song in real time, you want to see every step that goes into making a commercial pop record, definitely go check that out after this video. But let's go ahead and dive in so I can show you how to mix some vocals. The first thing that I want to talk about when you're mixing a vocal is actually getting a good quality vocal recording. And if you're just a mixing engineer, this might not be your job. However, I would make sure that the vocals are coming in good shape before you take on a project, or if you are recording, make sure that you can get them as good as possible before you start mixing, because that can make or break. So for this song, I just used the Loudon Audio LA320. It's like $699. It's their budget tube mic, which $700 is a lot for a mic for most people. However, when you're looking at tube mics, they can easily get up to $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. And so this mic is definitely on the affordable side. And if you like the sound of this mic, but you want something a little bit more affordable, they do have an LA220, which is their FET mic. And to be honest, that one is amazing. We did a mic shootout a couple months ago, and that actually ranked second behind my $5,500 vocal mic setup. And I think that mic's like $300, maybe $400. So definitely go check out those mics if you're looking for something budget level. I wanted to make sure that I didn't use something absolutely insane for this tutorial. So here's what this mic sounds like. All I've done is tuned it, time aligned it, and there's no processing on this whatsoever.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it.
So if your vocal's not sounding close to this, you might not be ready to start mixing it. So things that I would recommend, we have a video where we show you how to track vocals and we show you things to look for. So, getting the room to sound right, picking the right mic, getting a good performance out of the vocalist. We will leave that video in the description below. So if you want to see how to track vocals better, you can go check that out. But this video is about mixing vocals, but I had to start there because that is so important. And then time aligning it and tuning it can be huge, especially in a pop song like this, because if you have any pitch variation, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. It's just not really ever going to sit in the mix. So here's what the raw vocal sounds like in the song that we're working on with literally nothing else added.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
So now that I've done all of that, the first thing that I'll add to pretty much any vocal is, since I do tune it by hand and vary audio, it tends to do the job for me. However, I always like throwing on a little bit of auto-tune, and I typically always use Auto-Tune Pro. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set this to the key of the song. So we are in F sharp minor. And for pop, typically I'll have the retune speed anywhere between like 15 and 30. I think for this song, 20 is probably going to be totally fine. I don't need to adjust the formant or anything like that. Flex tune, natural vibrato, I might drag the humanize up just a hair. That's pretty much all I'll need to do, and this is going to get that vocal sitting right in that pitch pocket that I prefer for a pop song.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
So it's not doing too much. It's still pretty subtle. However, I literally can't think of a single mix that I've done in the past 7 years that autotune hasn't basically been first in my vocal chain. So if you're looking to kind of get that super tight pop vocal, I do suggest starting there, especially since they have a subscription. It's pretty affordable. So definitely try that if you're having trouble getting your vocals to really kind of sit perfectly. And then other than that, let's get on to actually mixing these. So the first thing that I like to do is I like to kind of sculpt the tone. And typically what I'll do is I'll do that with something like an EQ. So we're going to be using the virtual mix rack, and I'm just going to drag in this SSL style EQ right here, and we're going to start dialing in some knobs until the tone feels perfect. Typically when I start a vocal, I'll always do some kind of like high pass filter just because I don't want a lot of low end. If I accidentally hit the mic stand, I don't really want that. And then typically what I'll do is I'll start listening for frequencies. So I typically will do this while the song is playing. I don't love doing it in solo, so let's just do that.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
So like that to me right there, like that like 280 to 300 feels a little bit tubby. So I'm going to pull that out just a hair. I don't really need that much low end, especially in a song that's going to be pretty bright. And then other than that, let's start easing up on some of these high mids because they can get a little bit sharp, especially with more budget friendly mics. This one actually sounds pretty smooth right out of the gate, but there are a couple little spots that I want to kind of dial in. So I'm going to go right here to like 2.4. I'm going to tighten up this Q. This is just making this band a bit more narrow and surgical. And then we're going to dial back like a dB to a dB and a half.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me take it.
Here, solo.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and
we're just kind of tightening it up. And then same thing, I'm kind of hearing something around this like 4.5K, 5K right up here. You can hear it too if you boost these a lot.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
Right around there at that 6K, there's this really kind of like pokey, tinny high frequency. So I'm going to dial that back a little bit. That's kind of how I find frequencies that stick out of the mix. Because to me, to get something to fit in the mix, you need to get rid of things that you don't love, and you need to start boosting things that kind of complement the arrangement or the mix that you've already got going. And so that's basically all we're doing. And then I like to give a little boost on the top end. Sometimes I'll go up to like anywhere between 12 and 15K, and that's just going to give me a little bit of air, make the mic sound a little bit more expensive, and that is typically all the EQ that I like to do. If I need much more than this, it's probably because I got a bad source signal.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
So it's pretty subtle, but as we add this compression right here, it will become a lot more transparent. So I like to kind of have EQ before compressors because as I drag on a compressor, this just kind of allows me to tone sculpt going into this. So we're not going to do anything too crazy on here. Typically, I just use an 1176. This is Slate's version, the 116. And then I'm just going to dial a pretty fast attack. So on this, the attack goes from slow to fast, and the release goes from slow to fast. So we're going to drag the attack right around here. I don't want it too fast because I don't want it to completely just squash all transients. I still want that vocal to have a little bit of life, but I also don't want this to be moving super wildly. So typically when I'm compressing a vocal, I'll use one compressor to kind of cut off transients and make sure that we don't have any very fast kind of sudden jumps, and that's typically what I use an 1176 for. And then I'll use a compressor to kind of mellow out the entire vocal, and we'll do that next with something like an LA2A or an opto compressor. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just dialing in attack and release, and then I'm just going to set my input and my output so I get the gain reduction that I want.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it. I don't want to fall in love again.
All right, that's sounding pretty good. We might just need to dial back on volume a little bit.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
So you can hear this is kind of pulling up the quiet parts, and it's making sure that when I have those jumps, especially as I get higher into the range, it's not going to get super loud. I like a dynamic vocal, but I don't like an uncontrolled vocal. And typically that's what I'll do for 1176, anywhere between like 3 and 7 dB of gain reduction, like 1 to 3 consistently, and then like 5 to 7 when you have the louder parts. And then pretty fast attack, super fast release. That's pretty much it. 4-to-1 ratio. That should be good for almost any vocal. And then I'm going to use something like an LA2A. An LA2A is fixed attack, it's fixed release, and it's fixed ratio. So there's not much to mess up on this. You just have to make sure that you are not doing way too much gain reduction, because as you do, this can kind of make the low end start to kind of bloom in a way that I don't think is super suitable for most pop vocals. So we just want to make sure that we're not going to get way too much gain reduction.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it. I don't wanna fall in love again.
All right, that's sounding pretty good for compression. We've kind of evened it out. So we have that first compressor catching peaks. We have that second compressor kind of mellowing everything out where it feels consistent. And then the next thing that I'll do is just add a little bit of EQ. And this one's just to kind of add in some extra tone and add in some extra character. So it's tame it, tame the transients, mellow out the whole vocal, and then add your character. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to add a little bit more boost at like 15K. I want some air in this vocal, especially for something that's kind of like dark alternative R&B. And then I'm going to take the 2K. I'm going to bring that down a little bit just because that's a region that for my vocal starts to sound really gnarly very quickly, especially after compressor. So let's hear this now.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
I'm gonna add a little bit of 600 just so we can get some body in there just because this vocal is so bright. I don't want it to just be like super thin and shiny. So I'll add a little bit of mid body in there. Typically for the mids, your kind of 300 to 500 range is going to be super boxy. Your 600 to 800 or even 1,000 range can be very hit or miss depending on vocals. That's a region for me where my chest voice kind of sits and it sounds really nice to kind of boost it if I need just a little bit of lift over the whole mix. And then your low end, you're going to have kind of like the beefiness of a voice between 100 and 200 hertz. And then you're going to have some of that low end mud between like 200 and 400. Those are just kind of general guidelines, but that's where I like to start. And then let's go ahead and drag out some of this 200.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm
cool. And then I'm just adding a little bit of a high pass. And then I'm just kind of compensating for gain just so we can make sure that we don't have these wild jumps. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what this looks like with a VU meter. So a VU meter is a really, really, really good way to kind of see where everything's sitting and where everything's jumping. So here's a vocal without that compression and EQ we just did. Let's see where this pops in.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
So our more quiet parts are right around here between like -5 and -7, and then it'll jump up to anywhere between 2 and 0. Let's pop this compressor on so you can see. It doesn't get much louder. However, it feels louder, but it feels a lot more consistent. So watch, we're not going to get these crazy jumps up here.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it.
And that's why sometimes using something like a VU meter can be super helpful. I'm not a huge fan of always doing that just because I don't want to kind of micromanage myself with numbers. However, if you're trying to see exactly what a compressor is doing, that's a really good, quick way to do that. So that's kind of my typical EQ and compression. Now I think it's time to move on to the next thing because this is already sounding pretty great. Next thing we need to do is go ahead and de-ess this just a little bit. You got to make sure that you don't do this too hard because it's going to kind of make the vocal sound lispy. However, when I'm de-essing, typically what I'll do is I'll focus on the SH, like the sh, and then I'll focus on the S or like the really sharp T. So I kind of will use two de-essers. We're going to focus on the S first. So I'm just using Waves de-esser. It's super affordable. It's really easy to use. And then what I like to do is I'll solo this out. I'll turn sidechain on so we can hear exactly what it's attacking. And then we're going to find our frequency. So right around there, like that 41, kind of 50, 4200 range, that to me is where those S's kind of really start to pop out. And then all you need to do is drag your threshold back to where it's called attenuation. A lot of compressors call it gain reduction. It's basically just going to reduce the peaks at that specific frequency. And typically S's and TH's and plosives and anything like that are really just these really kind of resonant frequency spikes. So all this is doing is it's basically kind of doing like a compressor does or a multi-band compressor does. And as soon as it hits a threshold on that, it's going to pull it down.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it. I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you...
And then we're going to turn sidechain on to bandpass. Let's hear this.
You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
So now you can see whenever I have those S's, it's really just getting anywhere between like -3, -6. That's going to work for me right now. That's all I really need. I'm going to use the band pass because the high pass will make the whole vocal feel a little bit dull. And that's pretty good for my first one. So I have that first one for the SH sound. Let's go ahead and add one for that really kind of sibilant S sound. I'm going to go ahead and start around here at like 8,000. Let's try that.
Think I'm addicted, I can't shake it. I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
Let's try this on wide mode. Wide mode is basically going to give you a bigger kind of frequency scoop when it's doing that kind of compression or that gain reduction.
You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it. I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
So now we've got a vocal that's a little bit more fat, it's a little bit more thick, but we're still controlling those S's. Let's hear it in the mix now.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
The next thing that I want to do is add just a hair more compression. This is what I call sweetening compression. I'm just going to use RVox, and then I'm literally just going to drag it down like a couple dB, and then I'm going to do like 1.5 dB of gain reduction.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it.
Now with that RVox, it's feeling really tight. It's feeling really kind of present in the mix, and we're pretty much good to go. The last thing that I'll add before we move on to spatial mixing is going to be something like ProQ, and this is just so I can get in and get really nitty gritty. So typically what I'll do, one more high pass cut just because I don't want any of the low end from that compression.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't.
And then I'll find some of those kind of resonant frequencies.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it. I don't want.
And you have to be careful not to overdo this. It can be really easy to kind of get to the point where you're just sweetening and sweetening and sweetening. And then in the mix, it has no life and it has no character. I just like to make sure that I'm getting these resonant frequencies. And then if I need to dial them back, I can. The last one that I'm really hearing is like there's a high resonance up here that's really sharp. This is the one that I might go a little bit aggressive on.
Fall in love again.
Yeah, see, that's just an area where that particular mic and my particular voice just have a little bit of a disagreement. And it's a little bright. It's a little bit like distorted and saturated, and I don't love it.
Love again. You'll just let me down and I can't.
And my rule of thumb is typically the harder that I'm going to cut, the more narrow I'm going to be with my Q, which is going to be basically the bandwidth that you're EQing. And the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want to take out there's a lot of good information up here around 7K that's going to add brightness and it's going to add pop to my vocal. And I don't want to get rid of all of that. I just want to get rid of this one kind of really gnarly frequency.
Love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take.
And then other than that, there's a little bit of mud right here.
You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
And then one thing that I like to do to kind of keep my vocals a little bit bright is I will do a dynamic cut right around here, around like 200, 250. And that's just going to make sure that whenever I'm kind of lower in my register, I don't get that vocal to sound really tubby and full and thick.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
That sounds pretty good to me now. This vocal, I think, is about as good as I want to get it for this. The next thing that we need to do is add some spatial processing. Let's hear it in the mix. Here's it with none of the inserts that we have.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
Here it is with the inserts.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
It's just a little bit tighter. It's a little bit punchier. It's a little bit brighter. We don't have some of those resonances in there kind of fighting with those pads. I feel pretty good about that. Let's move on to spatial. So the first thing that I like to do is add vocal widening. I've talked about all of this pretty regularly on the channel. This is something that I just have baked into my template. And my vocal parallel widening is basically a de-esser that hits it super hard because I don't want any sibilance happening on the sides. And then I just have the Dimension D. So this is modeled after a Roland Dimension D. I've used the UAD one. This one is in Arturia. And to be honest, this is on every single mix that I do. Normally I'll have it on either dimension mode 2 or 3, and all that's really doing is adding some width. And then I just have this EQ right here to take out a little bit of low and add a little bit of sparkle. And I'll kind of ease that in so you can hear it.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
So it gives you a little bit of that like modulation and chorus, and it spreads your vocal out. So I'll almost always have that. And then the next thing that I tend to go to is like a short reverb. This is just going to be the Slate Verb Suite. It's the thing that they did with Liquid Sonics. It's also in the Slate bundle, where you can get the virtual mix rack that we were using earlier. And this is just a small vocal room. Typically when I'm doing like a short vocal reverb, it's because I want to add a little bit of extra width and a little bit of extra space. So if I'm adding reverb or delay or any kind of like modulation, it's to either add stereo width or it's to add depth where the vocal feels more upfront versus more kind of behind everything, or it's just because I want a little bit of tail on something. So this is going to be adding a little bit of that width and depth. And on my sends, make sure you're 100% wet because we are just sending out to it. And I'll kind of show you what this sounds like in the mix as we drive it up.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
The next thing that I want to do is go ahead and turn on like a quarter note delay. For this, I normally use repeater. For this one, I just wanted to use Comeback Kid. I've been using a lot of Baby Audio. And this one just works really, really well. Let me show you what this is looking like. So we're doing some EQ right here. I really like to EQ my delays and reverbs. That's a big help to make sure that your mix doesn't get super muddy and washed out and there's not too many frequencies happening everywhere.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down it.
So we're doing that with some of this band passing. I could probably even take a little bit more low end, go to like 600.
I don't wanna fall in love again.
Let's drag it back. I kind of liked a little bit in there. Let's go like 350. I'm cool with that. Next thing that we're going to do is modulate some stereo width.
I don't want to fall in love again.
So this richer is kind of doing like a widener by a chorus, and this wider,
I don't want to fall in love again.
It's just kind of giving you your stereotypical kind of wide tape delay sound. So we're going to go width right here around like 15. Let's go richer around like 20.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down.
And then I've got a quarter note delay. We're not doing ping pong. Feedback is pretty high. I'm driving up the tape a little bit. That's going to give it a little bit of saturation and a little bit of modulation. Same with swirl and sauce. So it's 7, 9, and 21 if you want to copy. And a big reason that I like this is because I've dragged the dry down. Again, you don't want your dry signal on any kind of send. And then I'm just kind of turning my wet up to compensate for that. But the real reason I like this is because it's got a ducker. So if I turn this down, you're going to hear how heavy this delay is.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
You can hear it starting as I'm still singing a phrase, and to me that gets really distracting. So we're going to drag this up to like 60, 65.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
And it's kind of got a built-in sidechain, and that really helps out, I think. So let's hear that in the mix.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
Next thing that we're going to add is a long reverb. Typically when I'm doing this, this will be the one that I use the heaviest. And I'm almost always lately using Valhalla Vintage Verb, and I'm either using a plate or the concert hole. So for this one, we're going with a plate. I like the 1970s version of this just because I like a darker kind of vocal reverb. And we've got a 4-second plate. So if I was at a hall, I'd probably do 2.5 seconds, but with a plate, for some reason, I just like them really long. And then what we're doing here is we are kind of EQing like I just did with that delay, where we're cutting out a little bit of high end, cutting out a little bit of low end. And by doing that band passing, we're making sure that that vocal is not huge everywhere. So we can have a really nice, big, poppy, shiny vocal up the middle. And then we've got all of these spatial effects, but since they're all band passed and since they're all kind of layered really subtly, you're not having these huge buildups of frequency and movement, and it doesn't sound like chaos. So here are the settings that I have on my Vintage Verb if you want to copy those. So that's what it sounds like with a send.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
And that's pretty much all this vocal needs. I will show you a couple cool additions that you could add. So now we have what I would call like a perfect vocal mix. If you want to add things that will add a little bit of character, now is the time that I would start doing that. So we could add in something like a slap delay. So a slap delay is really simple. I'm just using repeater. And this is basically just a delay that's got like a 72 millisecond delay on one side and a 104 millisecond delay on the other side and a decent feedback. And this is going to give you that kind of like almost bathroom kind of call and response thing. So let me turn it up.
I don't wanna fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
So again, this one's adding width. So vocal parallel widening, adding width. Vocal reverb short, adding a little bit of width, but mostly depth. Vocal quarter note delay, we're adding length. Vocal long reverb, we're adding width, depth, and length. And then vocal slap back delay, we're adding a little bit of width. And that's pretty much all I'll do for my sends. The last thing that you could do on something like this is you could go ahead and add something like a chorus or a harmonizer. That's something that I hear in this kind of subgenre a ton. So for something like that, I would just use something like the 910 harmonizer or the 910 dual harmonizer by Eventide. And then I would go ahead and I would just pick something like the wide vocal or the double vocal or the thickened vocal. So let's just try this. I'm going to drag this mix down to like 18.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head?
Just gives you a little bit of texture. And then other than that, you know, you can always do like your saturation. So you could go ahead and add something like Quadra Fuzz. This is just a free plugin in Cubase. You can go ahead and add a little bit of saturation.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep...
And typically if I'm adding distortion like that, I'm going to go ahead and then bandpass it after. So you could do something like this. You just don't want a lot of those highs and lows.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
You could even kind of make this a little bit more subtle, drag the mix back to 50% on this plugin. That's going to kind of just only use half of that effect, ease up on this bandpass.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down.
Turn the harmonizer up. There's like a million different things that you could do.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it.
But you don't need any of those last three things. The main kind of vocal mix on this is just tuning and time aligning by hand to get the vocal sounding really well. Having a good, well-recorded vocal on a good microphone. Again, we use the Lauten Audio LA320 on this one. And then it's just tightening it up with Auto-Tune Pro. Can't go wrong with it. If you don't have any of the Auto-Tune stuff, I highly recommend it. Virtual Mix Rack. And again, I think Slate also has a monthly subscription that's super affordable, so you should be able to grab that and copy these settings. And then the Waves de-esser. We're doing one for the SH. We're doing one for the ES. We're doing RVox, which is just a little bit of extra compression to really make that vocal pop. And then other than that, it's really just kind of fine-tuning everything with something like Pro Q or Infinity EQ or any kind of parametric EQ that your DAW has. And then it really kind of starts to shine once you have all of these effects and sends in. So let me show you what it sounds like real quick with nothing and then with everything. Here's the dry vocal that we started with.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it. I don't want to fall in love again.
And then here you go. Here's with everything, the sends that we have, the EQ, compression, and de-essers that we have. And this, to me, is a really, really well-balanced, well-recorded, well-mixed pop vocal.
I don't want to fall in love again. You'll just let me down and I can't take it. Why do you keep messing with my head? I think I'm addicted, I can't shake it. I don't want to fall in love again.
And there you have it. That is pretty much everything that I will do and I will pay attention to while I'm mixing a pop vocal. Again, every vocal mix is going to be a little bit different. You're going to use a different mic. You might have a different singer. The song is going to be different. The arrangement is going to be different. But I find that if you have a good quality, clean vocal, you know what to look out for when you're EQing and when you're doing your compression. You know how to use a de-esser so you can tame some things without really stomping on them. And then you kind of get creative with spatial effects. That really is all you need to mix a vocal. If you're having issues outside of that that are not creative, they're just purely technical, think about the arrangement, think about the mix around the vocal. Because most of the time that I'm hearing people have issues with their vocal mix, it's actually an entire mix issue and the vocal's just not really sitting well in that. So make sure that everything in your mix and everything in your arrangement has its place, and your vocal should pretty easily slide into that with some minor EQ, some minor compression, and then whatever you want to do creatively to taste. But other than that, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what videos you want to see in the comments down below. Let us know your favorite tip from this video. And then other than that, head over to our website, makepopmusic.com, where you can check out all of our stuff. We have a ton of free content over there, but we also have sample packs, preset packs, MIDI packs, and we have that new production course that I talked about at the beginning of this video, Producer Principles 101. It is open for enrollment, so go join that because we talk about stuff just like this and a ton more. Again, 14 and a half hours, 76 lessons, everything that I do in a pop song. So definitely go check that out. Make sure that you support the channel. Other than that, we'll see you guys next week. Much love. Peace.